Fellowship of the Broken, Making Sense of 12-Step Recovery by Angelo. Chapter 8. The Screen of Awareness. Another good everyday analogy is our use of screens, whether they be televisions, computers, tablets or smartphones. In this example we'll be using a TV screen, but the same will apply to any form of electronic screen. The modern TV screen is a wonderful piece of technology, producing images of the very highest quality that seem almost real. The latest primary technologies are liquid crystal display (LCD) and light emitting diode (LED) that both shine light through a matrix of tiny coloured liquid crystal cells to produce pixels on a screen. LCD screens use a number of lamps to provide the light source, whereas LED uses a larger number of light-emitting diodes. Each pixel is comprised of 3 subpixels with the colours red, blue and green. Combinations of these colours at varying intensities can create the perception of any desired colour in that location. The pixels amalgamate to produce an apparent image on the screen. The resolution of screens has gradually increased over time, and most of us will have seen high definition at 1080p that provides an array of pixels 1920 wide by 1080 tall. Hence there are over 2 million pixels on an HD screen. And the latest 4K or Ultra HD screens have 4 times this number and hence provide an even higher resolution. Screens obviously also include loudspeakers for sound reproduction, with sounds being synchronized with the images. All of this is of course digital and therefore ultimately comprised of binary. In this metaphor I will be referring to the screen as a single thing, although it's obviously comprised of multiple parts. When we sit down to watch TV, the first thing we do is switch it on. Prior to switching it on, all we are looking at is the blank screen. We see the screen and know it's there, and it's all we see. Once the TV is switched on, then images and sounds appear. Imagine that we are watching an action movie. We quickly become absorbed in the drama. The characters, places and events develop, and we begin to identify with the story. We may become attached to one or more of the characters and begin to experience emotions connected to the action as it unfolds. Our thinking may include all manner of thoughts, including, for example, injustice, judgment, resistance, identification and anticipation. We may try to comprehend the plot and guess what the ending will be. Anxiety, tension, excitement, compassion, fear, sadness, relief, joy and all other emotions may arise. Our minds will be fully focused on the movie, and it will take on a sense of temporary reality. We completely lose sight of the screen and totally overlook the fact that it's all a technical illusion. Such is the power of external focus and purposeful forgetting. What's actually happening is not real at all. The 2 million pixels on the screen are pulsing and changing at a rate of 60 times per second, or even higher on some screens. This creates the illusion of images and movement, and it all happens so quickly and smoothly that we cannot possibly perceive the true reality. If we were able to slow it all down dramatically and zoom in on a small portion of the screen, then we will be able to see the individual pixels pulsing on and off and changing colour. This is, however, not our usual experience, hence such matters are ignored, because they seem unimportant to our viewing. Whilst all of this is going on, and our focus and attention is entirely on the movie, we simply no longer see the screen. It's there, and always has been, but we don't see it because we're totally distracted by the action. Not only is the unseen screen there, but it is the very thing that is creating the movie experience out of itself. Without the screen, there is no movie. The pixels are unseen, yet they are the minuscule elements of the images of movement that we perceive. The screen is showing a particular movie, but it could easily play any movie. The potential of the 2 million pixels is infinite. The screen has unlimited potential, subject of course to whatever digital signals it receives. So as we sit and watch, we forget that there is a screen, and we forget that the screen is creating the movie experience. We're so involved in the people, places and events that it feels real. We may be sitting several meters from the screen, but somehow it feels like we're actually in it. We have a vague sense that it's just a movie and that we remain ourselves throughout, but this deeper sense of knowing is overshadowed by our emotional involvement in the drama on the screen. Sometimes the experience of watching a good movie can be emotionally draining, and there can be a sense of relief when it ends. When it does end, and we switch off the TV, we suddenly see that the screen had been there all along. And then we also begin to detach from the emotions, and they quickly fade, because the blank screen highlights the unreality of the movie. A memory of the movie may linger, but gradually the whole experience subsides. If we pause at this stage of the metaphor, then we can gain some important insight. The person who watches the movie is sitting apart from the screen and is in the role of observer. The movie is created by the screen and is the source of experience. The observer watches the movie and is aware of the experiences arising. The more the watcher is absorbed in the movie, the more real the experience will be. If the watcher were able to remain aware of being the observer, remind themselves that the movie was unreal, and acknowledge that it was all being created by the screen, then the movie could still be watched and enjoyed, but the experience would be far less intense. The screen would be seen at all times. The pulsing of pixels would be understood, and the illusion of the movie would be seen through. It would be a different experience. This detachment from the movie is an important step in understanding. We've seen that all experience takes place in the mind, and that we can be aware of the elements of experience through contemplation. This is the equivalent of moving from a position of being completely involved in the movie to the more detached position of being the observer. Just as in our metaphor, nothing has actually changed other than the watcher now realizing that they are not in the mind, but simply an observer of it. This simple change in perception is a move away from the personal ego mind towards universal mind itself. It does take persistent practice, however, otherwise we quickly forget and become engrossed in the mind once more. The next stage of the metaphor requires some imagination. We can imagine that the screen is three-dimensional and has some level of intelligence. In other words, it's self-aware and also able to create its own movie. The potential of the screen is unlimited, so it can literally create anything out of itself. The equivalent of pixels would be consciousness shining through itself at the quantum level. It's all pulsing and changing at a rate per second beyond comprehension. The screen begins to create its movie and through self-awareness is able to observe its own creation. It doesn't matter what appears in the movie because the screen knows that it's just a creation out of itself. All is well for a while, but gradually the screen becomes identified with one of the characters in the movie and starts to get emotionally attached. In doing so, the screen begins to forget that it is the screen and starts to believe that it's actually in the movie. Nothing has changed except that the screen is now giving its attention to a particular perspective within the movie. The more involved the screen becomes with the individual character, the more intense the emotions and the less awareness it has of its own true nature as the screen. Eventually, the screen becomes so identified with the person in the movie that it totally overlooks or forgets itself as the screen. This is despite the fact that as the screen, it is both the creator of the movie and the pixels out of which the movie is made, and is therefore every single thing in the movie, whatever that may be. The movie continues, and the screen, still identified with the person, begins to suffer unpleasant experiences within the drama. The screen feels like there's something missing or something wrong, but it cannot quite see what the problem is. The screen starts looking about within the movie to try to find a solution, but nothing seems to work. Gradually, the screen begins to understand that it might not be the person with which it identifies. It starts to look for itself as the screen within the movie, but of course it cannot find it because it is the very thing that it's looking for. The screen is not in the movie. The screen is the movie. The screen cannot ever find itself within the realm of its own creation. The screen starts to seriously question what is going on. There are parts of the movie that it likes, but there's a great deal that causes suffering. After some spiritual guidance, the screen starts to contemplate its own nature. Slowly but surely, the screen starts to realize that it's not just in the movie, but is an observer of it. Identification with the particular character begins to fade, and the screen moves increasingly towards the realization that it is the screen. Then, in a moment of enlightenment, it becomes fully aware of its nature as the screen. The character is still in the movie, but the screen is far less involved. It begins to take a wider perspective of the movie and see much more than it did when identified just as a person. The screen lives happily ever after, and the movie goes on and on. Characters come and go, everything changes from moment to moment, and the screen watches silently and is aware of all that happens. The final stage of the metaphor is to see that if the screen is able to identify with one of the characters, then, given its infinite nature, it could identify with all of the characters. Everyone and everything is the screen, and the screen is present in the movie, appearing as every person, place, and event. At the same time, the screen is always aware of itself as the screen, even if all of the characters do not realize it for themselves. We may search for the screen, individually or collectively, for our entire lives, but we will never find it, because it's not in the movie as the screen. If we think we have found it and try to tell everyone else about what we have found, then we are obviously fooling ourselves. All we can do is be the screen and help others to do likewise. The screen of awareness is ever present in and as each and every one of us. Consciousness, awareness, knowingness, mind, spirit, or being announces itself within each of us as the irrefutable knowledge that I am. This is the common knowing that unites every sentient being.